So you've got some rocks you'd like to drill holes in, huh? Well, I've drilled hundreds of holes in rocks over the years. I've learned a few techniques that work. I've run into some problems and figured out how to fix them. So let me show you what I know, and you'll be drilling some holes in no time. So I drill several different sizes of holes. The smallest ones I drill are 1mm holes, and I drill those with this Dremel that's in the Dremel drill press attachment. So this is a regular Dremel. This comes out, and you can use it for other Dremel-y purposes. But what I use those for, one of the things I use them for, are Christmas ornaments. So I need a place to hang these from. So up here on the top I put in this little tiny eye, and I just make that out of a scrap of wire. This is silver wire that I use for like wire wrapping and stuff. I don't know if you can see that. There it is. So to make that little itty bitty hole, I use these little itty bitty drill bits. I get these from Kingsley North. I buy them 100 at a time. They don't last very long, but 100 at a time they cost a little bit less. And I go through 100 every few years. So anyhow, these, like I said, they don't last very long. Sometimes they don't drill very many holes at all. Other times you get maybe a dozen holes out of them, and then they're just worn out. So here's one of the tops. This hasn't been tumbled yet. I mark a little crosshair where I'm going to drill the hole. And I drill them before tumbling, because if I wait until after tumbling, that surface is going to be kind of slippery and the drill bit doesn't catch quite as well. And if it slides around on there, it'll scratch it up. So I don't want to scratch up my nicely tumbled stuff. So I drill them first and then tumble later, and that way I can get rid of some of the scratches that I might have put into it. You might notice I have a little tub of water here. I always keep my piece submerged in water. The main reason for that is to keep the drill bit cool. But it also keeps the dust down too. So what I'm going to do, I'll talk to you before I do it because this thing's kind of loud, but I'm going to get this lined up here before I turn it on. And I'm going to hold on to this piece with my hand, and the drill bit is going to get pumped up and down. I'll drill for a little bit and then bring it up a little bit so it can cool off, and then drill for a little bit and then bring it up so it cools off. And just keep that process up. One thing before I forget to mention, these drill bits, they work well in stuff like this white quartz. I've drilled a ton of pudding stones with these. Unakite works well. I did try drilling Lake Superior agates once, and that just didn't work at all. These drill bits just burnt up immediately. So you can do fairly hard rocks, but not super hard rocks. All right, so let's start her up. Alright, so I got my hole drilled. I'm not drilling all the way through in this situation. I just need to go deep enough for that eye. So I keep a little drill bit around, just an old one, and I use that as a depth gauge. So, and then that far, and that's going to be far enough for my little eye to not bottom out when I put it in there and glue it in. So there's one little hole done. I've drilled more holes making little stone beads than anywhere else. I have a couple of friends who used to make a lot of jewelry. He did the lapidary stuff, and she did most of the jewelry making. And they used pudding stone a lot. This isn't pudding stone, but what they used was pudding stone. And anytime they had a little scrap that had a little piece of red in it, he'd set it aside. So every once in a while they'd send me like 100, 150 little rocks like this, and all they wanted me to do was drill a hole through it, tumble it, and then send them back to them, and they'd use it in like bracelets and things. So there's a couple things you got to be aware of when you're drilling all the way through the rock. First is you need to protect your little tub here so you don't drill a hole through it and have a leak. I just do that by putting a board on the bottom of the tub. But the other problem is that when you drill through it, when the drill comes out the back side, it'll chip out the rock a little bit on the way out. So the first thing I do is drill halfway through the rock. So there's my partially drilled rock. It hasn't gone all the way through yet. And on my board here, I have old drill bits stuck in the board. So I just drilled a hole with one of these drill bits, snipped off part of an old drill bit, and glued it in the hole. I've got 4 of them here just because they wear out eventually. So when I make one of these, I make several of them. So what I'm going to do is line this up so that the 2 drill bits touch like that. Okay, then I'll hold that steady. Get my rock here. There's the hole side, and I'm putting that down. onto the rock. Now when I drill, that drill will hit the other hole just perfectly. I think you can see light through there now, and it looks really good on both sides. Perfectly drilled little hole. Maybe the worst thing that can happen when you're drilling is that your drill bit breaks off in the hole, and breaks off way down in there where there's nothing sticking out that you can like grab with a pair of pliers or something. I tried drilling it out, like I think I only did that once or twice, and the new drill just immediately burns up when you do that, when it hits the old drill, so that's no good. I posted a question online what to do about it, and somebody suggested to me that you use alum powder. So I think this is for making pickles or something. I just bought it at the grocery store, but apparently it dissolves steel if you soak it long enough. So I tried soaking it for weeks and nothing happened at all. I even took it out in the garage and soaked it in muriatic acid, thinking that would dissolve the steel, and as long as you're using the right kind of rock, it won't dissolve the rock. And that didn't touch the steel either. So I don't know what these things are made out of, but they don't seem to react to acid or alum. So if anybody has another idea of how to get those out of there, I would love to know, because I've thrown away several things because there was just absolutely no way I could figure how to get it out. Other place where I drill holes is making these beads. These fit on my wife's Pandora bracelet. I've made a whole bunch of these over the years for her. I made a whole video on this, so if you want to see how I make these, I'll put a link in the description of the video that shows you how. But that hole is not 1 millimeter, and the bit won't fit in the Dremel, so you need a different drill press for this. So this is just a Ryobi drill press I bought at Home Depot. It's made for woodworking, so it's nothing special. It's not a very expensive drill. There's metal all over this thing that could rust, so I'm just very careful to wipe it down as soon as I'm done, make sure any of the splashing that got on it gets wiped off. So you can do this the same way I did the other ones, or I've got a little board here and there's just a little dowel that's about the same size. It's actually a little bit small, but you drill halfway through. This is one that I just did as a practice one. Drill halfway through, put it on the peg like that, line up the bit with the little dowel there, and then you're going to get pretty close. And if you were to look really closely in this one, the holes kind of line up, but not absolutely perfect. So this works well. If I had a bigger dowel and I was more careful, I could probably get a little bit better results than I've gotten here. But there's another way to do it that I want to show you. So I'm going to drill another hole through this, and I'm not going to worry about flipping it over. I'm just going to drill it from one side, and you're going to see the chipping that happens as the drill exits the other side of the rock, and then I'll show you what to do about that. Okay, I finally got through. That took a little over 10 minutes to drill just that one hole, so this is not a fast process. There might be better bits than you can get. These are pretty cheap bits, but with that bit, that's how long it takes. And you can see how much it blew out the back there as it exited the hole. In fact, here's all the little scraps that came off of there. This is the bead that I drilled from one side, and you can see this is where the bit went in, and then that's where the bit went out, and it's all chipped up. So one way you can deal with this is just to grind that off. So I've already worked this down into close to my bead shape, so I don't have to do as much grinding. And I'm just going to use my cab machine here to grind off the end. Okay, there it is after I've ground it off. That is the same bead. The downside to this is you've got to plan ahead, because this was a little bit longer and I cut a little bit off, so now it's a shorter bead than it would have been before. So you have to decide what's more important. Is it more important to have a super straight hole like this one has, or when you drill from both sides, if there's a little bit of misalignment, that saves you the trouble of grinding off the end, but you got not a perfectly straight hole maybe, depending on how well you can do that. So you can do this on a cab machine like I just did. If you have a flat lap, that works really well. You could maybe even cut it off with a saw. It might be a little bit of a chipping problem. If I was going to cut it with a saw, I would cut it first and then I would cut down your shape. Like I made a circle around the outside here, or whatever shape you're making. I would cut first and then do the final shape. That way if there's any chipping from the saw going across here, you grind it off later. A lot of the rocks that I drill holes in end up going in a vibratory rock tumbler. And when you take them out in between stages, you got to make sure you clean those holes out really well, or else you can transfer grit from one stage to the next. So you can see in this one, that hole's full of grit. It's all black in there instead of white like the rest of the rock. I used to use either an old sewing needle or an old drill bit and just run it under water and clean out every hole like that. And then a friend of mine ended up buying me this. It's kind of like a water pick, but it's an off-brand. So this just squirts water out. It's used for cleaning your teeth, but I use it for cleaning rocks, and it works really, really well. So I will demonstrate. The only downside to this is that it usually sprays right back in your face. So put warm water in it unless you want a cold bath. Just like that. Oops, just got me. And there it is, all cleaned out. With these larger beads, the problem is that the hole gets jammed full of this ceramic media that I use in my tumbler. And it can get jammed in there so hard that you really can't get it out without breaking the bead. Sometimes I've used like a little nail and just tapped it out with a hammer. That works sometimes, but as I said, it can break the bead. So a safer way to do it is use that little 1 millimeter bit on the Dremel, and I just drill right through the middle of the ceramic. And you drill a couple holes and the ceramic usually breaks up, and then you can get it out. You can also prevent the ceramics from sticking in there in the first place by filling the hole with wax. So I just drip wax from a candle into the hole, and then I use a little knife to scrape off any that's on the outside, just to make sure the outside all gets properly polished. I'm not sure how long the wax would take to wear off in the tumbler, so I just play it safe by scraping it off. Then to remove the wax, which you should do between each stage so you don't carry grit in the wax, you just dip this in hot water and the wax just pops right out right away. It's real easy to get it out, and then just fill it again for the next stage. The wax is a little bit of a hassle, but I still think it's easier than dealing with stuck ceramics. The bit that I was just using to drill out those beads is called a core bit, because when you drill, it leaves a little core behind. It just drills around the outside of the circle so it doesn't have to drill as much material. You can also buy much larger core bits, and of course they'll drill a bigger hole, but what I use these for is not to make a hole, but to keep the core. My wife has this Magnabilities necklace where you can just pop in these little plastic things. So this one says Wildcat Pride because that was the mascot at the school we worked at. So what I decided to do is make little stone inserts for it instead. So here's Petoskey stone. I just got a magnet glued on the back, and you can just pop that in. And to me, that looks a lot better than those plastic ones. So when I first started doing lapidary stuff, I made a whole bunch of these for, made them for other people too. I made lots and lots of these, and I made them all by just drilling a hole with the core bit and saving the core, making a cab out of that. This bit has had a lot of use, and even when it was brand new, it was pretty slow going, especially through harder material. So I always preferred doing soft rocks like Petoskey stones. So I've got one here that I'm going to cut. Got some cracks over here I want to avoid. And now I have to decide which side I like the best, what's going to be the front of my cabochon. So back here, these hexagons are kind of elongated and irregular looking. Where on this side, they're a little more regular, I guess. So I'm going to put the good side down, and I'll show you why in a little bit. That underneath there, I've avoided my cracks. Everything lined up just the way I want it. I think about there. And let's drill a hole. Just pop through. So there's my cab, and you can see there's a little bit of roughness around that edge, but that's the edge or the side that I'm going to dome. So as I put my dome on there, I'm going to be cutting all that off, and the back part is going to be very nice. So since I'm doing some work on this side anyhow, I let that be the side that I messed up a little bit. So that'll make a nice little round cap. I'm not going to make it for the Magnabilities thing anymore. I'm going to use this just to make a regular pendant. So I'll put a groove around the outside edge here and then put a wire around it. There are other methods of drilling holes in rocks, like using an ultrasonic drill, for example. I don't have one of those, so I can't show you that. But if you have any tips or tricks you'd like to share, just put them in the comments and I'll talk to you there.